Blake Snell to the Giants and Jhoan Duran to the IL. Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Tuesday, March 19th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White. And at last, Blake Snell has signed with the Giants on a 2-year, $62 million deal that includes an opt-out after the first season. In the end, Snell remains in the NL West with another good ballpark to pitch in. We've talked a lot about Blake Snell this offseason, Scott. He's a high-variance pitcher. He comes with injury and performance risk, but when he's on, he does have that Cy Young upside. What do you think about this move to the Giants, and when might we actually see him pitch in the regular season?
Okay, well, the move to the Giants is irrelevant. I understand it's a good place to pitch. He was already in a good place to pitch. One of those 3 years turned out the way we wanted it to. So I'm not even really factoring that in here to the analysis for Blake Snell. When will he pitch? Okay, so apparently he did have a 4-inning simulated game in front of scouts. He's been keeping himself pretty well built up. I imagine the Giants aren't just going to roll with that. You know, they're going to want to give him some kind of an abbreviated build-up. I suggested on the full-length podcast, maybe he could miss all of April. It probably won't be that long. Half of April, 2 or 3 turns. You know, I think that's a reasonable expectation. Maybe it's only one. I don't know. The bigger problem, that's a problem, by the way, like when you're actually going to get to use them. The bigger problem is what Blake Snell is going to be when you are using him, because it has been extreme ups and downs. I mean, it got so bad in 2021 and 2022. I'll try not to walk you through the whole history like I did in the full length podcast, but he took an ERA of over 5 with him into August in 2021. He took an ERA of over 5 with him into the second half in 2022. And it wasn't just the ERA that was a problem. He was so inefficient, walked so many batters, that he was killing you in fantasy. There was a point, it went on for so long, him being so bad those 2 seasons, that there came a point where I was like, all right, you just got to drop him, or at least think about it. Hopefully you didn't, because the best came after that. He dominated after that. And it kind of played out similarly last year too. It's just the switch flipped a lot sooner. The switch flipped more like mid-May, and he went from having the ERA over 5 to having this incredible run that won him the Cy Young. And yet, Blake Snell, for the year, he still had 5 walks per 9. It was the highest among qualifiers by half a walk. And he was also by far the biggest overachiever in terms of FIP and expected ERA. So those are 2 red flags right there. Why did it take the reigning Cy Young winner this long to sign? And why did he ultimately have to accept a 2-year deal, $31 million in each with an opt-out in between? I think it's because everybody's pretty skeptical of what he did last year. There were improvements with his arsenal. You could say, okay, the changeup played a lot better. The curveball played a lot better. Maybe they'll keep playing a lot better. I can't predict the future. But I know that rostering Blake Snell has been more than just a headache, because again, it goes on so long. You can't be sure the switch is, like, just because the switch happened to flip each of the last 3 years, that's not a certainty. What if second half, you're dying in ERA and WHIP, and you just got to stick it out with Blake Snell. You've kind of made your bet at that point. And so you're staking your season on this guy who's been very volatile, and who the league doesn't seem to trust, and who has an injury history, and who's not going to be ready on opening day. And I'll probably take him if he's there around the 25th starting pitcher, but I won't be excited about it.
All right, Twins closer Jhoan Duran will start the season on the IL with a moderate right oblique strain. The Twins hope to have a better idea of his return timeline within the week. How far is he falling down the rankings, Scott? And who is next up in the Twins bullpen?
Way, way down, because a moderate oblique strain, I mean, that sounds like something that could sideline him for a quarter of the season. So he's dropping behind like the Robert Suarez's and Jose Leclerc's in my closer rankings. Not quite as far as Devin Williams, whose timetable is more like half the season, but he's dropping pretty far. Is Jhoan Duran. As for who replaces him in Minnesota, I'm guessing given Rocco Baldelli's history, that it's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. It was before Jhoan Duran assumed that role last year. Brock Stewart had great numbers last year. He wasn't around for the full season, but dominant. Griffin Jax has been there a lot longer, and so maybe has developed more of a level. Maybe Baldelli has a little more trust in him, but it could be the two of them. It could be others mixing in. I would say if you're speculating on saves, let's say you've already drafted and you're wanting to pick up a save source off the waiver wire, I'd go with Yoel Payamps or Abner Uribe, the two Brewers options, over either of those Twins options I just gave you, Brock Stewart and Griffin Jax. One, because the timeline is longer. Two, because I think the Brewers are more likely to eventually settle on one guy.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.